This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. Yeah. Do a great job of making sure you're fully insured. And they do everything they can to save your money. It is all at Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Mike DeCourcy on the show today. We'll have him on later. I told you I had a feeling North Carolina was going to win big yesterday. And I believe they did.
They looked like the national champions last night.
Yeah, they played great. I mean, to their credit, they played great. It's about matchups to me. As you know, I'm big on matchups. I don't play the name game. Never have. And to me, San Diego State is, with all due respect, Houston light. So what do I mean by that? Houston is a team that is an outstanding defensive team. And they're an okay offensive team. San Diego State is a very good defensive team. Not in maybe Houston's class. But they also don't have as much offense as Houston. So you end up being, in this case, what I refer to as Houston light. And I said that R.J. Davis would be the best player on the court, and he was. So, and Elliot Cadeau as well. But Davis is the one I cited yesterday. Just thought it just looked that way. See, the controversy about them being in, that's over. It's over. Okay? There's no controversy about them being in. They're in. So, yeah. What are you going to do now? They're in. It's that simple. So now that they're in, you go with what you have. And they won big last night. So, but there are consequences to them being in. And here's one of them. Darian DeVries, 1 year at West Virginia, leaves. He is taking the job in Indiana. That's the domino effect of North Carolina getting in and West Virginia not being in. West Virginia is not playing any longer. That meant he was free to negotiate with anybody, and he's going to go to Indiana. So for Darian DeVries, what does that mean going to Indiana? Well, for one thing, here's a guy that was a longtime assistant at Creighton for both Greg McDermott and Dana Altman. I mean, he was an assistant for Dana Altman at Creighton. That's how far back he goes. 6 years at Drake, he was great. He had this player on his team at Drake his last 2 years by the name of Tucker DeVries, his son, who was the Missouri Valley Conference Player of the Year. Transferred to West Virginia with his dad, but could only get in 8 games this year. He was hurt, upper body injury. And we expect him to transfer to Indiana. 2-time Missouri Valley Conference Player of the Year. Now the flip side. Malik Renault is transferring. He's put his name into the transfer portal. And so is Gabe Cupps, guard, who's best known for being on the same team as Bronny James on that all-star group that they had. He was the point guard on that team. Now, Penn State also has transfer news as well, as Jahvin Carter, as expected, put his name into the transfer portal. Okay? And none of us are surprised by that. This is something that we saw coming. And, you know, none of us are surprised about it. Okay? He wants to start. And with Caden Mingo coming here, I think he kind of felt like there was that impediment to starting. And he, you know, I mean, he'll compete with anybody. I mean, because Jahvin's a great kid. And he's decided that he wants to go. I mean, this is above all. We can talk money and things like that, but above all, for Jahvin, wants to start. Yeah, he wants to be a starter, and he wants to get a lot of minutes. I mean, look, Mingo's coming here with the idea that that he's probably going to be the guy, and he's coming here with the idea he's going to eat up some minutes. Well, Ja doesn't want to be the guy that just keeps coming off the bench. He doesn't want to do that.
That's 7 spots to fill now, right?
Yeah, but this was one that for about a month now I expected to happen. This is not to me personally even remotely a surprise. Okay, it's not like, ooh, Jahvin Carter. No. This is one I've been expecting to happen, and not because you could sense through body language or discontent. No, none of that stuff. I can't say enough nice things about Jahvin Carter. He's wherever he goes, he's going to help that program. Good player, good locker room guy. Yeah, and hopefully he can go someplace where he can play a fair amount and not just 15 to 20 minutes a game. So, okay. So that's the first one. I am not surprised that is the first one at all. And to be honest with you, I've been expecting it for about a month now. And Mike said that he had a great talk with him. He said it was honest. He said feedback, everything. And I mean, this is the way it is in today's world. I mean, we have to understand what today's world is. This is today's world. I mean, would I love to see Jahvin Carter stay? Of course I would, because I think he's, first of all, a quality person and a great family, and last but not least, I think he's a good basketball player. Okay. But look, everybody has, everybody has a desire to play, and get minutes and be a starter, and I completely get it. But like I said, this one is like, there'll be people who go, oh no, I expected it for the past month. I guess people would like to have like to know some of the private conversations Dick and I have sometimes. Same thing with Jack and I. What do you guys actually talk about? But I was not surprised.
I guess my only thought is if there's 6 open spots, if he stayed, and we know Mingo's coming, that still seems to be a lot of backcourt minutes and a lot of scoring still available to me.
Yeah, but they'd be playing essentially the same spot. It's not as if Ja's the off guard. Now, Ja can play the off guard, but it's not as if he is the off guard. You know what I mean?
It's college basketball in 2025. You need more than one ball handler.
Todd, how old are you?
I know.
Okay. He's 19. He's 19 years old.
I know.
Okay. They're not going to have the same real world thought process that we have, right, about it. Right? And that's okay. You got to frame it as to what's his mindset. You've got to frame it as to what he sees. You've got to frame it as to what his family sees. Right? And that's what they see. Well, if that's what they see, then I completely and I can't say enough good things about him. I mean, I think he's just a terrific young man. I think he's a good basketball player. Ed DeChellis, by the way, also retired today.
Oh, I missed that. I didn't see that.
14 years. I texted him this morning. I said, look, credit to the profession and an even better friend. I can't say it because Ed and I go back 45 years. Ed and I go back 45 years to when he was a manager here at Penn State. It was interesting for a period of time. You've got on the road roommates, and Ed's on the road roommate was John Norwig, who was the Steelers trainer for 37 years. Well, Wig was the trainer here. So,
I wonder if who's his? I wonder if Emmett Davis ends up with that job.
Maybe. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. Didn't really look at it.
I just know he was at Cornell for a long time and was successful, and he's been on Ed's staff at Navy for a couple of years now.
Yeah, I don't know. That part didn't even look at it. So it was more to me about Ed. And Ed and I have talked a few times in the last couple of years, so I knew what his situation was at Navy, and I sort of knew what he was thinking, kind of a year-by-year basis. And he finally decided this was the time. So, hey. But yeah, Ed retired after 14 years. And then Darian DeVries, of course, getting hired at Indiana. That's one of the bigger jobs off the board. This hire was made at Indiana by the athletic department. Oh, the last one was. No, it wasn't. Okay, that was more of, with Quinn Buckner leading the board of trustees there, they had a heavy influence on the last pick. Okay? Not this time. All right?
I did not realize that the defensive tackle Jared DeVries was his brother.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. So, but good basketball coach, man. He can really. He's a good coach. He did it all those years at Creighton. Did a great job at Drake. Now, having his son being so talented didn't hurt his last couple of years at Drake. That did not hurt the cause. And it goes to West Virginia, but his son couldn't play. His son could only play 8 games for him this year. And they still won 19.
He does need an injury waiver to play next year. They're still waiting for that.
They'll get it.
I'm sure they will.
He played 8 games. And I think that they will. I think he'll get it. So, and go from there. But Malik Verneau and Gabe Cupps put their names into the transfer portal. So look, this is going to get active. You're talking about.
I was going to say, wait till next Monday after the first round of the NCAA Tournament, first and second round.
Well, I mean, on Monday it opens.
You'll hear a lot more names starting Monday instead of the couple that keep trickling out per day.
Yeah, right. But you're going to get. There's going to be anywhere from 1,200 to 2,000 names in the transfer portal in basketball. It's grown every year. I remember it was a big deal. Like, can you believe there's 700 names in the transfer portal? Now it's 1,000, 1,200.
I was going to say, wasn't there 1,700 last season?
Yep.
Really?
So, yep. I mean, it's just the way it is. And I've got, over and over again, I'm getting a lot of guys when I'm preparing for a season. I'm getting a lot. It used to be I would get guys and I'd have to do research on the 2 teams they were with. Now I'm getting to the point where I have to do a lot of research going back on the 3 teams they were with. What I find interesting is the ability to stay eligible in all this. And how do you get your degree hopping around? Because, look, no offense to all these guys that are making moves and making play. Like, R.J. Davis, let's take him. Now, he's played I think this is his 6th year at North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's his 6th year at North Carolina. Okay? So he's not a guy you look at and go, oh, okay, fine. He's got his degree. Okay? He's been there 6 years. He's got his degree. But it's the guys I'm wondering about that, like, I'm on my 3rd school, I'm on my 4th school. Where are you on credits? Where are you on progress to your degree? I mean, R.J. Davis will play some overseas. I mean, for a while, I don't know if he'll get to the G League or not, but he'll play somewhere overseas or in the G League. I mean, okay, that only takes you so far. And it's the same with the vast majority of players. Look, only 60 get drafted in the NBA. I mean, that's it. And this is something where I realize you can now come back and get your degree, and the school will take care of it. Now, I realize that is there. That is now an option. But when you've got 98% of basketball players not playing in the NBA, which is really where the money is, don't you need a backup plan? And your backup plan isn't Milan. I mean, that you can do that for a while. I mean, you can play overseas for a while. That's not an issue. Pete Lisicki played how many years in Italy? Now, what helped him out is that his grandmother was from Italy. So he could be classified as an Italian player. He didn't have to be one of the 2, quote, foreign players on the team. That didn't hurt. But Joe Crispin played in Europe for a while after playing in the NBA with the Suns and the Lakers. Glenn Secunda played a long time over in Europe. But you've got guys like Tyler Smith wrote a great book about how he bounced around all over the place. Japan, Uruguay, Europe. There's only so long you can keep your career going. And at some point, the great line delivered by Jack's old head coach, Chuck Knoll, comes into play. It's time to get on with your life's work. Now, what bothers me the other day is that you and I went in and told the suit that it was time for him to get on with his life's work. He seemed confused by it. He said, I'm working right now. I said, you don't understand what we're saying. What? At that point, you seemed to shy away.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I mean, I thought you were behind me on this all the way. Now I'm a little confused. All right, we'll come back more in a moment. Brought to you by Purdy Insurance on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The Beverage Supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
The new car game is really heating up in March at Sunbury Motors Kia.
We wanna see you in a Kia. Sunbury Motors Kia.
Lease a 2025 Kia K4LX for as low as $295 a month for just 36 months. Or buy it for as low as $21,884. Make a fast break to SMC and choose from 17 K4s. Sunbury Motors Kia has a 2025 Kia Sportage EX March sale price as low as $29,859. And it's a slam dunk with 26 Sportages priced to move. In fact, Sunbury Motors Kia has 122 total new Kias to choose from. Everyone's a winner with Kia because all new Kias come with a 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. Don't sit on the bench. Let's be alive in 2025 and up your new car game in March at Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Warranty is a limited powertrain warranty. For details, see retailer, go to kia.com.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Great to be with you on the show today. Brought to you by our good friends at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, best in new inventory. Great pre-owned inventory with the Sunbury Motors guarantee. Terrific service department that backs it up every step of the way. At Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Always pleased to be joined by my good friend Mike DeCourcy, who's absolutely one of the best in the business. Mike, welcome back. Great to have you with us.
How are you, Steve?
Doing great, Mike. Mike, look, this tournament started, so to me, personally, controversy's over. But 111 bracketologists, which includes you, who's at the top of the hill, right, had West Virginia in. Just your thought on how it played out and your opinion as to why it played out with North Carolina getting in.
Well, it's hard to really say for sure. It could have been the brand element of it. It could have been the fact that I don't think there was any corruption or anything like that. I've never alleged that.
Agreed.
I don't believe that. But I do think that if you're in a room full of people that like you, and even if you step away and you're in another room having a cup of coffee, maybe those people don't want to disappoint you when you return. That's kind of a possibility, certainly. But whatever it is, there was no case for Carolina to be included in the NCAA Tournament in 2025. None. I mean, they beat one team that was anywhere near being in the NCAA Tournament.
That's right.
Other than, I think they beat one low major automatic qualifier. But relative to having to earn your way in at the highest level, they beat one team. I've never seen that before, ever. Anything close to it. And yet they did it. And so it Look, this is not a year ago. I think out of I'm going to round it off. I think of around 200 bracket analysts or bracket online brackets that were at the bracket matrix. I think out of 200, it was something like 150 had Oklahoma and about 60 had Virginia, something like that. Yeah. And Virginia got in, and I'm like, okay, whatever. I didn't agree with it. I'd like to have had 68 out of 68, but it's not something that is extremely bothersome. There is something of a case for Virginia. It wasn't as good a case as Oklahoma's, but they got in. Okay, do whatever. But what we saw was completely out of the ordinary, and it's a terrible look for the committee, given that Bubba Cunningham was the chair of the committee this year. It was a terrible look. They undid a lot of credibility that people in the NCAA that I really like and trust had spent decades building up. And that's where the problem lies. Not only did they leave out teams that were more qualified, but they damaged the credibility of future committees.
Yeah, they've done that without question in doing that. And then they go out and they win big last night, which was interesting because, look, to me, and this is only my evaluation, you tell me, to me, San Diego State is Houston light. Really good defensive team, not great offensively, and that played well into how North Carolina plays because San Diego State's not Houston.
Right. Yeah, that's a lot of it, and I think the motivation coming from having heard everything they heard. This is not an unusual phenomenon in the NCAA tournament. The team that gets the most controversy often goes on and wins. It happened when Notre Dame was selected. I think it was 2022 over Texas A&M. There was a fair amount of controversy about that, specifically because Notre Dame had lost to Texas A&M on a neutral floor during the season. But I've not seen any reaction like this because, as I mentioned before, there's not been a situation like this. You don't see teams that win as little against consequential opponents as Carolina did, even getting real consideration. They beat one. You take the top 40 of any metric that you want to choose, even whether it's the resume metrics or the predictive metrics like KenPom. Take the top 40 teams of any of them, and Carolina beat one team in that group. One team. Their median win, half above, half below, was 128. I think I went and picked out West Virginia. I think it was like 65, something like that. It just, there's everything that you look at except the straight predictive metrics, which the committee is not supposed to really lean on those. Right. But what they did was they decided, well, we can justify Carolina using these, so let's do it. Carolina is a brand, people will watch, blah, blah, blah. Whatever it was that motivate them. Or we just don't want to let Bubba down. Whatever it was a specious argument. It doesn't hold up. And it's a real disappointment, especially if you are one of those teams, whether it's West Virginia or Indiana or someone beyond, that was left out.
Yeah, before I get to the tournament itself, you reference Indiana. Darian DeVries is going to take over after 1 year at West Virginia, 6 years at Drake, before that assistant long time at Creighton. What were your thoughts on that hire?
Well, I like it from a basketball standpoint. I don't know Coach DeVries at all. I was at one of his press conferences, and I didn't really want to press trying to meet him that night because it was the night they played at Pitt, and I don't know that I've seen a high major team give a worse performance than they did that night. But they recovered from that. They were so bad in that Pitt game. I really thought Pitt could. Oh, I have seen a worse performance. UCLA at Cincinnati in 2018-19 was the worst high major performance I've ever seen. But they came back from that. They came back and played well and beat significant teams. Won it. Did a great job in the Bahamas. They won at Kansas. They did a nice job at coming back from that embarrassment at Pitt. And so I have a lot of respect for him as a coach. I'm curious how he will handle the other aspects of the Indiana job, what I call the senator responsibilities.
Yep.
You have to be a figure in addition to being a coach.
Yes, you do.
I think if you won so big that you could possibly supersede that and not have to be a figure, but that's the part I wonder about. I wondered about it with Arch Miller, and he didn't hold up to it very well,
right.
and I think it affected the performance of the team, the program. But Coach DeVries is a little older than Arch was when he got the job, so I think that will help him. That experience at Drake, under Mack at Creighton, and then at West Virginia this year, I think that will help him.
It also wouldn't hurt if he can make sure his son's along with him too. It would be give him a starting point.
Making sure his son is important, but also you want to keep Trent Sisley on board, 4-star power forward from in-state. I think that would be a nice one to keep on board. He signed early. It obviously doesn't have to stay. He's allowed to go elsewhere if he wishes, but fighting to keep him on board would be a good move.
Yeah, I think because Tucker's not bad. It was, I think, 2-time Missouri Valley Conference Player of the Year. So you go through these brackets like everybody else. You know, we all know who the ones are. Got it. So down a few lines, give me a couple teams you look at that you find intriguing and would be a tough out.
Yeah, I don't. Since we're only going a few to start, I'll go to Maryland. I wish, for Maryland's sake, that they weren't in with Florida, which I think is just a terrific team. I think if Maryland were in the Auburn section or the Houston section, especially the Houston section, if Maryland were Houston's 4, I'd have them in the Final Four. I really like them. I don't like them versus Maryland. So that's one. If they can get past Maryland, they can keep going. That's a terrific team. BYU, I don't like to make the Final Four because I think the team that they're in with is the best team in the country, the most qualified to win it, and that's Duke. But BYU as the 6th seed, I think is pretty promising. I like them to get to the Elite 8 where they would play Duke and probably go out at that point, but that's a team. I'm intrigued by Gonzaga, and I don't have the bracket in front of me, but I think in my mind that they are the 8-9 for Houston, and if I'm correct about that, I think that that's a dangerous situation for the Cougars because Gonzaga, first of all, there are multiple players on that team in that rotation that are part of, maybe not a huge part of because nobody stays 9 years. Not yet anyway, Steve. But they've made 9 consecutive Sweet 16s, and a couple of those teams went on to the Elite 8, and a couple went on to the National Championship game. So they know how to advance in this deal. They haven't had to do it out of an 8-9 game, but they know how to get by and continue to advance. And I didn't really like their performance 80% of this year. Every time I watched them, they disappointed me.
I agree. I agree with that.
But when they played St. Mary's in the WCC championship game, I was like, where have these guys been all year?
Yeah, they played with a juice, energy, and intelligence against St. Mary's. And you have to play St. Mary's smart because they slow the game down so much.
Right.
And you know, what are they, 359 in pace? And I thought Gonzaga, you and I both know that it's easier to slow the game down than it is for a team to speed the game up against a team that's slow.
Absolutely.
And they sped the game up against St. Mary's, which I think is extremely hard to do.
Absolutely. The only way to speed up a slow team is if you press, and Gonzaga both does not do that and did not do that in that game.
Right, and did not. What's your St. John's is interesting because they're not a great three-point shooting team. They're only about 29-30%. What is it about Rick Pitino's team that impresses you? And does that three-point shooting come into play as to how far you think they can go?
there's a couple of elements to that. First of all, I think you're being much too kind. Statistically, they're an awful three-point shooting team.
Thank you.
But here's the thing. There's two elements to this. One is that the only three-point shooting team that's in the same neighborhood in terms of inefficacy as St. John's is whoever plays St. John's. That's
right.
The first element. They do a phenomenal job of defending the perimeter. They're as a defense, I think they're second in the country in efficiency, and it begins with their ability to defend the perimeter. The second thing is, over the last 8 games, R.J. Lewis is shooting 50% from three. It's not a bad sample size.
Yeah.
He steps forward, and the reason that I really got turned on by this element is that I watched the Creighton game on Saturday night, and he didn't just hit shots late when they found another way to get up. The game was in the balance. They're playing at the Garden. The pressure to win the game, because once you're, winning that title is not huge, but winning it once you're in the game, like if you're in the game, you want to win it. If you lose in the semis, you think to yourself, okay, that's 40 fewer minutes that we have to play. We'll get by. We already won the regular season. We're good. But once you're in that game and there's 20,000 people wearing red at the Garden, and you're going to spend those 40 minutes winning or losing, so you might as well win. That game was in the balance, and he stuck 2 huge threes. And that's when I said, wait a second. Like, that's not who he's been all year, and it's not. But it is who he's been for a month. And if he could play like that through the course of this tournament, I don't necessarily see them winning it, but I could certainly see them in San Antonio.
Yeah, because I saw Lewis play in person when he was at UMass, and I liked him. I mean, you kind of look at him, it's like you're one shot to see a guy play, and guess what? I was impressed by what I saw.
Yeah. And I will tell you this, too. He's a pro. I mean, he's like a big-time pro, like a first-round type.
Yes.
Yet he shoots like that. I mean, because he's big for his position, he's really dynamic, and he could be a great 3-and-D guy, but he's got to be the 3 guy. And that, like I said, that's not a bad sample size. He may have improved. It does happen. And I mean, we'll see. And remember that 50% over 8 games is in high quality games, trying to win a conference championship regular season, trying to win a conference tournament. Those are not we went out and he shot 50% against Iona. I mean, those are against high quality Big East teams and under real pressure situations.
What's your thoughts on John Gross's team at Akron that lost only 1 game in the MAC this year, has won 7 in a row? I'm not saying this is not like second weekend kind of team, but what kind of team do you think they are at Akron?
They're a little small for me to get super excited about them advancing in this thing.
Right.
But they have a lot of toughness, a lot of spirit. They got into a huge hole in the Miami game, and their tournament future was slipping away, and they fought their way back into that. They struggled defensively against the son of a former Duquesne player, Rick Suter, who I remember very well from my days in Pittsburgh. And his son, I believe his first name is Mark, had a great first half, and they fixed the defense and slowed him down in the second half and played really well at that end, and then made big shots and big plays to get back into it. And 17-1 in the MAC is really, really hard to do. It's the most balanced conference in all of college basketball.
Yes.
To be able to do that is extraordinary. And I think I went back and looked. I think it's been 20 years. 20. I think it was around 2001 the last time somebody won the MAC with 1 loss. So a really impressive performance. And I do like their spirit. I just don't know whether they have the size to succeed in the NCAAs.
Look, Richie McKay has a lot of resources at Liberty, and you see it in football, you see it now in basketball. What's your thought on Liberty as a program and in the spot they're in?
Well, Richie's done a really nice job there.
He has.
He was there early. He left to go to work for Tony Bennett at Virginia for a while, and then he came back. and he's had very good teams there. And I've been impressed by what he's been able to do in that program. And you're right, they do have good resources. They have great facilities and all of that. And they're a dangerous team. They hit a rough patch, I think it was around late January, early February, and they really got it back together the closer they got to March and earned the number one seed in their league and then won their conference tournament. And they will certainly be dangerous this week in their NCAA game.
Which Big Ten teams do you think have the ability to make the second weekend?
Well, I mentioned Maryland. I think they have a nice shot. I don't love the Florida matchup, which would happen in the Sweet 16, but I think they have a great shot at making it there. I think Michigan State has a great shot at the Final Four. I think Purdue has a decent shot to make the Sweet 16. I don't mind their matchups much. I don't love Wisconsin's matchup against BYU. I think that's a really dynamic offensive team for them to deal with. And Wisconsin, I just would love to see more often from them going over their heads a little bit. I think that part of the reason it doesn't happen a lot is that they still have a reticence from certain players on their team to take advantage of everything the offense provides. Too many passed-up shots in that offense still bothers me, and I think that gets you beat eventually. And I think BYU is the kind of team that would beat them.
Yeah, see, that's what I saw in the last regular season game. I'm sitting there, and I kept thinking the same thing about Wisconsin. And then what happens with them is then they start getting too happy on the farm with the three. And that's why I felt in the championship game, Blackwell was the one guy to seem to get it. He just started taking the ball to the bucket because he understood that it wasn't happening, and the other guys did not have that same sense as him. That's how I viewed it.
Yeah, to a large extent, I 100% agree with you. The other thing I would add to that, though, is that I thought Tanjay, I think they just relied on, okay, well, we'll just let him win it. And we'll just let him go, and if he can get it done. And Michigan was all in on defending Tanjay. They were willing to give up opportunities to other players. It's one of the reasons Blackwell had a good day was he was getting better matchups. He was getting more advantages.
Yes.
Every time Tanjay brought the ball near the lane, everybody converged. They couldn't do that on two separate players. You can't get enough players into place. But they were ready for it with Tanjay, and that hurt them down the stretch of that game. It's the funniest thing. I mean, I've worked at BTN now for 15 years, and over the course of the last 3, I remember I did a tape on Stephen Crow passing up open shots 2 seasons ago. Not this season, last season, but 2 seasons ago. Yeah. And then so I think I made my point about it. And then through the course of the last couple of years, I've heard other analysts there make the same point because it keeps coming up. And then I was in the green room after tip-off on Sunday during the Michigan game just for a little bit to get my stuff together so I'd be ready for selection and all that. And then I went out back and watched the game from courtside. And as I was in there, I heard Grant Hill make the same comment about Steven. And I'm like, if this many people are saying it, how often does he hear it in practice? And yet it never quite all the way takes.
Yeah, exactly. Quickly, your Final Four is?
Michigan State, Florida, Tennessee, Duke. I went with Tennessee for a fairly lame reason, I guess. Once I got down to the final 8 there, I looked at it was Houston against Tennessee. I don't love the other teams in that region to get that far, although I could see I could see an upset here or there. I could see Houston losing early. But I had Houston and Tennessee, and I went with Tennessee because I already had 2 1-seeds, and I'm like, there's no way 3 1-seeds. So that's that. But I really like Florida. I think Michigan State's got a shot to pull that off, and then Duke is my national championship pick, so obviously taking them.
There you go. You and I are pretty close, so
there you go.
So not bad. And yes, I have Duke winning it, but yeah. All right, my friend, always a pleasure. It's easy conversation because you're too good at it. All right, appreciate you.
My pleasure, Steve. Thanks.
You bet. The great Mike DeCourcy. breaking down the NCAA tournament. We will come back with more in a moment. Has the suit revealed his bracket yet?
Not that I know of.
Does he know the tournament's taking place?
Not that I know of.
On News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
Hey, where have you been?
I'm, laying low.
Laying low?
Yeah, the heat's on because of my new Hyundai from Sunbury Motors. I got $7,000 off on a new Hyundai Santa Fe. They're gonna think I stole it.
Deal's so right, it almost feels wrong. At Sunbury Motors Hyundai. During the Hyundai Getaway Sales Event, take $3,500 off, plus 1.99% APR financing for 60 months, or $7,000 off on all 23 of the 2024 Hyundai Santa Fe's available, which start under $40,000. Take up to $10,000 off, or 0% APR financing for 60 months on 7 new Hyundai Ioniqs, starting under $42,000. And as always, military and first responders get an extra $500 off their purchase. Plus, all new Hyundais come with Hyundai Assurance and America's best warranty, 10 years, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. Come down to Sunbury Motors Hyundai today, and together we can be alive in 2025. Sunbury Motors Hyundai in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury.